Okay. Okay. So what we are saying is that now we are going to open an economy, which means we're going to allow our country, or we're going to allow our economy to actually transact with other countries. So we are saying that the total demand for domestic output is composed of consumption, and we understand that consumption comes from households. Okay, and then investment that comes from businesses and households, and then I've got government purchases of goods and services, which comes from the government, and then I've got net exports, which is the difference between what we export and what we import. Okay, so this is the last component is what we've added today, is what we have introduced today to make our model complete, because all along it's been incomplete. Okay, all along it's been incomplete. So that is what we're going to look at today. So we've just added net exports. Okay, and net exports is just the difference between exports and imports. Okay, so it's net because we're getting a difference. Okay, so it becomes net. We're trying to get the difference between what we export and what we import. Okay, and then we should understand that domestic spending on all goods and services is just the sum of domestic spending on domestic goods and services and on foreign goods. Okay, so the demand for domestic output comes from first internal demand, which is consumption plus investment plus government expenditure, and then we also bring in the issue to do with external demand, because the moment we bring in net exports, we are looking at what we demand and what they demand from us. Okay, so in this case we are saying that the total demand for what we produce here in Zambia comes from what is demanded by Zambians and what is demanded by other countries, like what they demand from us. Okay, so in this case then we can make a conclusion that the total demand of domestic output comes from two sides. The first side is from domestic demand, and then the other side comes from external demand, because the moment we bring in external demand, we are talking about net export, because net export is just a difference between what we demand from them and what they demand from us. Okay, which is a difference between what we export and what we import. So what we export is what they demand, what we import is what we demand from them. Okay, so that is the skeleton of our discussion this evening. I don't know if it's evening or night, whatever. Okay, so our model then becomes total output, or let me say total demand, is equal to consumption, investment, government expenditure, and net exports. Okay, but then our aim is to factor out this thing that we have introduced today, which is net exports. We want to understand what constitutes net exports. Okay, so if you do your mathematics, if we do our mathematics, we're just going to make net export as the subject of formula in this case. So if we make net exports the subject, then what we're going to do is we're going to take consumption the other side, we're going to get investment the other side, and we're also going to do the same with government expenditure, which means we're going to remain with the net exports, which is this. Okay, so net exports is equal to total domestic output minus domestic demand. Okay, so net exports is equal to total output minus domestic demand. Okay, now what do I mean by domestic demand? It is domestic demand because this demand originally comes from, for example, if we're talking about Zambia, this demand is coming from Zambians. Okay, so the total net exports, so we understand that net exports is just the difference between what we export and what we import. Okay, so then we are saying that net export is equal to total output minus domestic spending, and we understand that domestic spending is just domestic demand, which is the demand that comes from Zambia, for example, demand that comes from within the economy. Okay, so we are saying that here we are trying to show that in an open economy, domestic spending does not really need to equal output of goods and services. Okay, so what I'm saying is that domestic spending in this case is consumption, investment, and government expenditure, must not, or is not a case that this domestic spending must equal total output. Okay? So, in an instance that output or what we've produced is greater than domestic spending, okay, what we've produced is greater than domestic spending, then we're going to export the excess. Because for us to have excess, it means that the supply is greater than demand. Okay, so if what we've produced is more than what people are demanding, or if what we have produced is actually greater than what is demanded domestically, then we understand that we're going to have excess out of output. Some of the output won't be, used or won't be bought, for example. Then that excess is what we're going to export. Okay, so that is what we're talking about here. That if output exceeds domestic spending, then we export the difference. Okay, then we're saying that net exports are going to be positive, because in that case, if we have got excess, then we understand that we are going to export that. Okay, and if what we export is greater than what we are importing, it means that net exports are going to be positive, because net exports is equal to exports minus imports. Now, if exports are greater than imports, we understand that the answer is going to be positive. And if net exports are positive, we understand that our economy is doing well. Okay? We understand that our economy is doing well, because it's more like we are getting more money from what we sell. Okay? We are getting more money from what we sell. So that's the intuition. Okay? That's so that's the basis. Okay? So if net exports are positive, then we understand that our economy is doing well, because we are exporting more than we are importing. Okay? Now, if output falls short of domestic spending, meaning that we have produced, like our supply is less than demand. What we have produced is not enough to cater for the domestic spending. Then in that case, okay, in that case, for us to make sure that demand equals supply, we will be forced to import, so that we meet the demand, we meet domestic demand. And then if that is true, then we expect net exports to be negative. Why should they be negative? Mind you, net exports is just the difference between what we export and what we import. Now, if what we export is less than what we import, we understand that our answer is going to be negative. And the moment net exports are negative, we understand that our economy is not doing well. We are not producing enough. Instead, we're actually buying more than we're producing. And if that is the case, then we understand that we're going to have negative net exports. And the moment we've got negative trade balance, we understand that our economy is not doing well. Okay? So that is how we are supposed to understand and interpret net exports. So the first step is that net exports is just the difference between what we export and what we import. If what we export is greater than what we import, then we're going to have positive trade balance. And if trade balance is positive, we understand that means that our economy is doing well, because we are selling more than we are buying. So we are getting more money than we are spending our money. Okay? But the opposite is also true. Okay? If what we are buying is more than what we are selling, then we're running a negative trade balance. Okay? And then if what we produce is equal, okay, if what we produce is equal to domestic demand, then in that case, it means that we are not doing anything anyway, because we are not making anything. It's more like we are making zero profits. Okay, so this then drives us to what we call net foreign investment and the trade balance. Okay, net foreign investment and the trade balance. So we understand that our equation has been modified because we've added net exports, which means GDP is now going to equal these four components. consumption, investment, government expenditure, and net exports. Now, let's do some manipulation. Okay, let's do some manipulation. If we remove from total output, if we remove consumption and then we remove government expenditure, then what we're going to remain with is just investment and net exports. What I'm doing is I'm just more like making some funny subtractions here. Okay, so from total output I'm removing domestic consumption, and then I'm also removing domestic government expenditure. Then what I'm going to remain with is the investment and the difference between what we export and what we import. Now, let's call this national savings. Okay? So let's call total output minus consumption minus government spending. Let's call this term national saving. Now the question is, why are we saying it's national saving? So now, let's assume we have produced 17 million as our GDP. From the 17 million, we have removed a proportion or a fraction that goes to consumption. Again, we have removed a proportion that goes to government expenditure. Then what remains? Okay, what remains is what we can save as our as our savings. Okay, so when we remove consumption and government expenditure from total GDP, what we have is national savings. Okay, but now let me bring in something here. We are saying national savings, but what we must understand is that national savings can be broken down into two: private savings and public savings. Okay, because we understand that the moment we say output minus consumption, okay, or let's say the total income that goes to the consumers, and then they, according to their marginal propensity to consume. Someone's mic is on. Someone's mic is on, so I assume you want to say something. Okay, so what I'm saying is national savings can be broken down into two: public savings and private savings. So private savings comes from we, the consumers. Okay, then public savings comes from the government. Now, we can then say that what I'm talking about is not here. Okay, so we can then say that national savings is equal to private savings and public savings. Okay, so what consumers save plus what the government saves equal national savings. Okay, now let's get back to our meat. So we are saying that output minus consumption minus government expenditure must equal the total level of investment plus net exports. And then we understand that net exports is just the difference between what we export and what we import. So let's call this guy here national savings. Now, if that is the case, then we understand that national savings, okay, which is just S, is equal to investment plus net exports. Okay, so now national savings, the total level that Zambia must save, okay, the total amount of savings that Zambia is capable of saving, for example, must equal the total level of investment plus the difference between what we export and what we import. Now let's do some manipulations. If we subtract investment here, and then we also subtract investment, like we subtract investment here on the left hand side, and then we also do the same on the right hand side. Okay, so the negative investment and the positive investment is going to go, but on our left hand side, we're going to remain with the savings minus investment. Okay, savings minus investment. So now it's like this. Since we're saying that savings must equal investment plus net exports, then from the total savings, okay, from the total amount that Zambia saves, we remove the amount that people want to invest. Okay? Then the remaining amount is what we are going to use for external transactions. Okay? Let me repeat myself. We are saying that national savings comes from public savings and private savings. Public saving comes from the government. Private savings comes from us, the consumers. So these two constitute what we call national savings. Now, national savings must equal investment plus net exports. Now, if we remove investment from the national savings, okay, the excess that we're going to remain with is the one now that we're going to use for net exports. Let me put it in this way. Let's assume that what you have, okay, let's say you have got a 10,000 right now, and then from that 10,000 you can remove a certain amount that you can use for investment, okay, and then the excess, you are sure that if I remove this amount, I'm going to remain with an excess. Then that excess, okay, then that excess is the one that you're going to use now to start demanding, for example, other goods produced from other countries. So that is what we're talking about here. So then we're saying that national saving accounts identity shows that an economy's net exports must equal the difference between its savings and its investment. So what I mean is that the amount that we use for net exports comes from the difference between what we save and what we invest. Meaning that if the amount of savings is greater than the amount of investment, then our net exports must be positive. What do I mean by that? If we have enough savings to cater for investment, okay, maybe reaching to an extent where we even have an excess, then we're going to use that excess or the remaining amount for net exports. Okay, so that is what is depicted here when we're saying that savings minus investment must equal net exports. And then we understand that net exports, okay, net exports is actually the difference between what we export and what we import. Now, then what we're saying is this: net foreign investment must equal the trade balance. So now, net foreign investment is just the difference between national savings and investment. So, from the national savings, if you remove investment, okay, from the national savings, if you remove investment, the amount of money that you are going to remain with is what you are going to use for net exports. And savings minus investment is what we call net foreign investment. Net foreign investment is just savings minus investment. And then the difference between what we export and what we import is what we call the trade balance. Okay? And I think I've already said that if what we export is greater than what we import, then we have positive trade balance. Meaning that we are doing fine because we are selling more than we are buying. Which means we are earning more from trade. Okay? We are gaining actually from trade. But if what we export is less than what we import, then it means that what we are supplying, what we are supplying on the market is less than what we are demanding from the market. Then it means that from the business point of view, we are making a loss. Okay, so negative trade balance is not good in most cases. It's not good because to some extent it's actually one of the contributing factors to increased exchange rates, because it's more like we are demanding more of a dollar than what the dollar is demanding from us. Okay, so we are supplying more kwacha on the market because for us to demand dollar, we have to supply kwacha. Okay, so for you to, for example, to get, let's say, seeds from let's say America, you are supposed to supply Zambian kwacha on the market. Okay, and then when you do that, you are demanding dollar. So if the demand for dollar is greater than the supply for dollar, we understand that exchange rates are going to increase. And if that happens, we understand the repercussions, which is where we are right now. Okay, so I just wanted us to have this yes. Okay, so we are saying that net capital outflow. Okay, so net capital outflow can also be called net foreign investment. It's the same thing. Okay, so savings minus investment is net foreign investment, and it can also be called net capital outflow because it is now the difference between what we save and what we invest. And we know that in most cases in economics, whenever we're talking about investment, we're talking about coming up with things that were never in existence. So that is why we're bringing in the issue of capital. So net capital outflow is equal to the trade balance. And the trade balance is just the difference between exports and imports. Now, what I was saying is this. If savings minus investments, okay, are positive, okay, if savings minus investments are positive, then we have a trade surplus. Now, what do I mean by this? If savings minus investment is positive, then we are saying that if that is true, then savings are greater than investment, which means the money that we saved, okay, is actually greater than what we are demanding for investment. Then it means that we have a positive trade balance. We have a positive trade balance. Okay, so a positive trade balance means that we have a trade surplus. Okay, we have a trade surplus. Then we mean that we would be net lenders in the world financial market. Now, what I'm talking about here is that, for example, let's say that the savings were 20 million. Okay, we get 20 million of our GDP as savings, and then domestic investment, or let me just say investment, is just 10 million. So out of the 20 million, we have only spent 10 million, which means we have a surplus of 10 million which we can lend, okay, in the world financial market. So we can then supply our excess money on the world financial market, so that those that are demanding for more money can actually borrow from us. So that is why we are saying that when we have got positive trade balance, then we are going to have a trade surplus. And a trade surplus means that we are actually gaining from trade in this case. So if savings, which is private plus public savings, are actually greater than investment, then we expect net export to be positive. Okay, we expect net export to be positive because we have enough money that we can actually lend. So that is what we are saying. We are now going to become net lenders, not net borrowers, but net lenders. We are the ones lending them our money. We are the ones giving them our money, so that when the repayment period comes, we actually get our money plus some rate on top. Okay, so whenever savings are greater than investment, we have a positive trade balance, and a positive trade balance implies a trade surplus. Okay, good. So if that is true, then we're exporting more goods than we are importing. Okay, if that is true, that savings are greater than investment, then we become net lenders in the world financial markets. And if that is the case, then we are exporting more than we actually importing. But again, the opposite is true. Okay, if savings minus investment are actually negative, which means that for example, domestic investment is greater than domestic savings. Okay, people want to invest more, such that all the banks have run out of savings. Then the banks will be forced to start borrowing. Okay, then those financial intermediaries and banks and everyone involved in the financial market will be forced to start borrowing from external banks, for example. Then we start borrowing from IMF. We start borrowing from the World Bank because these savings are less than the investment. People want to invest more than the available savings. Then we're going to become net borrowers. And if that is the case, then you're going to run a trade deficit, because it is now the opposite. Instead of us exporting, we're actually importing more. We are importing more money from them than we are selling money to them. Okay? So in that case, we are going to run a trade deficit. So a trade deficit occurs if and only if savings are less than investment. Okay? And then a balanced trade only occurs if savings minus investment is exactly equal to net export. Okay? Meaning that the difference is zero. Okay? That is, if net exports are exact zero, which means they're just going to cancel each other. What we're exporting is exactly what we're importing. Then they're just going to cancel each other, because it's more like you are adding -1 plus +1. Okay? So, for example, if we're exporting 10 million Zambian kwacha, and then we're importing 10 million, then they're just going to cancel each other. Okay? So in that case, we're going to have to say we're running a balanced trade. So in most cases, a balanced trade is better than a trade deficit. Okay? Because when it comes to balanced trade, you understand that nobody is losing. We are actually, you are benefiting, I'm also benefiting 50-50. It's okay. Okay? Than running a deficit. Okay? Than running a deficit. So now, let me give a practical example of trade deficit. Okay? Listen, and if you follow what is trending right now in our economy, right now, we understand that the big brother, I mean the government, the big brother has actually, initiated a lot of projects, a good number of projects. Okay? And then we reached a point where we like the big brother actually reached a point where he could no longer manage to fund those projects. Some of them were 50% completion, some 20%, some shan, till the big boss himself had to say that all those projects that are above 50%, let us put more effort on those ones. Okay? So you understand that most of those projects that were 50% and above are the ones that have been completed. Okay? And that is leading us to the issue of having a trade deficit. Okay? Because I understand that for us to finish those projects, we borrowed. And that is why if you check our external debt today, you're going to be shocked. Okay? Our external debt today, we're going to be shocked. And I'm just wondering where the money is going to come from to pay all that money. Okay? So that is what we're talking about here when it comes to trade deficit. So we are actually importing more than we're exporting. We're importing loans. We're importing loans from the World Bank. We're importing loans from IMF. We're importing loans from external banks and everything. Then we're actually exporting. So in that case, we're running a deficit right now. Check the external debt that we have as a country. You're going to understand what I'm talking about. Okay? So please, let's be familiar with the World Bank. You can visit their page. Let's be familiar with IMF. We can also be familiar with our own central bank. Let's play around with these things because, we're part and parcel now. Okay? Now, let's try to understand the savings and investment in our small open economy. Now, when we say a small open economy, we mean an economy that is not big enough for it to induce some changes in the global financial market. Let me repeat myself. When we are talking about a small open economy, we are talking about an economy like Zambia, which has got, it can do nothing for it to change some status quo in the global financial economy. What Zambia can do today has got nothing. It cannot affect the world. For example, the global financial market. Nothing. Even if we say we are pulling out, it's okay. We can pull out. No one is going to feel the pain anymore. But for example, if countries like America try to misbehave, hey, the financial market is not going to be the same. Countries like UK, China. So that's the difference between a small open economy and the bigger one, because the small open economy, cannot affect anybody. Even if you try to make some gymnastics and everything, it's not going to affect anybody. So we call such an economy a small open economy. Okay, meaning that even if you increase your for example, your interest rates, you're just affecting yourselves. Okay, so now let's go. So now here, our aim is to come up with a model, okay, of international flow of capital and goods. Okay, then after that, let's try to address issues such as how the trade balance responds to changes in policy. And by policy, we're talking about both monetary policy and fiscal policy. Okay, for example, what will happen to the trade balance if the government increases taxes domestically? Okay, what is going to happen if the government increases government expenditure? What is going to happen to the trade balance? Okay, what is going to happen to the trade balance if the government increases money supply? Sorry, if the central bank increases money supply? Okay, so these are some of the issues, the burning issues that we aim to address. Okay, so this then brings us to the idea of capital mobility and the world interest rate. So that there's a difference between domestic interest rate and the world interest rate, because domestic interest rate is determined domestically, but the world interest rate is determined in the world financial market or the global financial market. Okay, so now the trade balance, we understand that must equal net capital outflow. Okay, the trade balance is just exports minus imports, must equal net capital outflow, and we understand that net capital outflow is the difference between savings and investment. Yes.
Could you please just repeat on the introduction part about the capital mobility? You're breaking, couldn't get you. And I wanted to ask also, is it okay to say the negative trade balance brings about inflation? Is it okay to say that?
Negative trade balance brings about inflation. Let's analyze if that is true.
Okay.
Okay.
You can repeat on the capital mobility, the introduction. Couldn't get you.
Okay, capital mobility. We are just talking about. Anyway, I was talking about net capital outflow and the trade balance. That net capital outflow is just the difference between savings and investment. And then I think I also talked about world interest rates and the domestic interest rates. That world interest rates are determined in the global financial market, whereas the domestic rate of interest is actually determined domestically. Okay, and then your question was, will it be true if we say that negative trade balance leads to inflation or is equal to inflation? Well, negative trade balance means that we are demanding more than we are exporting. Okay, and that is just going to deal with what's this the exchange rate. Okay, that is going to do with exchange rate. So let's hang in there for now. Okay, I'm going to answer your question when we do the connection between net exports and inflation. That is so as we progress, we're going to reach that side. Okay, so for now, let's hang in there. Okay, let's just get pegs and hang in there. Okay, so we are saying that the trade balance must equal net capital outflow, and trade balance just takes the difference between what to export and what to import, and the net capital outflow is the difference between savings and investment. Okay, so we understand that this must equal savings plus investment. Okay, so now let's go back to what we discussed last time. Okay, let's go back to what we discussed last time. That we understand that the demand for renewable funds and the investment, there is that negative relationship and everything. But we're not going to make that assumption that real interest rates equilibrate savings and investment. Instead, we're now going to allow the economy to run a trade deficit. So our first analysis is to allow our country to run a trade deficit. Okay? Mind you, we are trying to understand the connection between capital mobility and the world rate of interest. Okay? So for us to understand this connection, we are first going to analyze this from the trade deficit point of view, where we are going to allow our country to borrow from other countries. Okay? Or we are also going to analyze this from the other viewpoint, where we're going to run a surplus. Okay? Where instead of lending, instead of borrowing, we are now going to lend to other countries. So, for us to understand the connection between capital mobility and the world rate of interest, we are going to look at this thing from those two different standpoints. So, I've said that a small open economy, okay, a small open economy is an economy which is very small, such that whatever action that it's going to make, it's not going to affect the world capital market or the world financial market. That's a small open economy. Okay? Now, this brings us to the idea of what we call perfect capital mobility. Okay? Now, perfect capital mobility is a situation where there is free movement of capital between our country and other countries. No restriction. I can invest there, I can invest here. That's what we call perfect capital mobility. Okay? Which means there's no restriction when it comes to trade. Zambians can trade with Malawians. Malawians can trade with Zambians. Okay? So, we are assuming that this small open economy has got perfect capital mobility. Okay? And then for perfect capital mobility to be enhanced, we are going to use the world rate of interest. Because trade is not just happening within. In this case, we've opened our economy, which means we're going to use the world rate of interest, the prevailing world rate of interest. And we are denoting that world rate of interest as R star. Okay? Meaning that, remember last time, we said that the demand of loanable funds and the rate of interest, like there exists a negative relationship between these two. But now, we are not looking at the domestic rate of interest. We are now looking at the world rate of interest. Okay? You're looking at the world rate of interest because we've opened our economy. We've opened our economy. So now, from the closed economy, we said that what determines the rate of interest is the equilibrium of domestic savings and investment. Mind you, we said that savings was fixed. Okay? That is what we said last time. Savings are fixed, and then we have the downward sloping demand curve, which is a demand for the loanable funds. But loanable funds, the supply for loanable funds is actually fixed. That is what we said last time. So, we are saying that in a closed economy, last time, we said that what determines the rate of interest is the equilibrium of domestic savings and investment. And that same principle applies even when we open the economy. Meaning that the equilibrium of the world savings and the world investment is going to determine the world rate of interest. Now, let's understand this from the first part. When we have a closed economy, we are saying that what we are saving and the demand for those savings are actually going to determine the domestic rate of interest. Okay? Because we said that the interaction between demand and supply is going to force our economy to reach into equilibrium. And in this case, we're talking about the demand and supply for loanable funds. Okay? Now, we can then just duplicate this same analysis to the open economy, where we are saying that the world savings and the world investment determines the world rate of interest. Meaning that the total amount of world savings and the total amount of global investment is going to determine this global rate of interest. Okay, just like the case when we're talking about the closed economy. Okay, so if there is some disequilibrium, between what the world is saving and what the world is demanding, we understand that in that case, even the rate of interest, the world rate of interest, is also going to be disturbed, which means we expect some deviations of the world rate of interest from the equilibrium, because there is a disequilibrium in the global economy. Okay, so now let's go back to the classicals. For us to understand this, let's go back to the classicals. Wait, what time did we start?
2030.
2030, and this is 16 past 9. Hey, okay, it's 1 hour. So by 21:30, I think we should stop, because some are cooking, and everything. Okay, so tomorrow we are going to look at the Lagrangian multipliers in microeconomics, because I've heard that you guys, my Elisa, sorry. Okay, I've heard that you guys are facing challenges with the Lagrangian, so I think tomorrow we're going to focus on the Lagrangian multipliers. And wait, sorry guys, how far have you gone in mathematics with Derek? Just help me answer.
What? The margin of cost and those things. The costs and revenues. The mathematics or what?
Ma?
Said maths, right?
I can't hear you.
I'm asking, did you ask for math or what?
Math.
On combinations, that's probability. Combination.
That is statistics. Yes.
I see. So what are you doing in mathematics? That's statistic.
Yes.
Because mathematics.
Yeah, so
doing revenues and costs.
Oh, revenues. Yeah. Okay, I'll talk to him, because initially I believe he was supposed to do because Lagrangians fall under derivatives, the partials. So I don't know, but it's okay. I can help you with Lagrangians in micro, so that when he teaches you in mathematics, you're going to be shushering him, because by then you're going to have an understanding. Okay, so tomorrow let's look at the Lagrangian multipliers. Tomorrow is Thursday. Yes, tomorrow is Thursday. Okay, so please understand that some of these sessions we schedule them like on days that we never agreed. The reason is simple: we are trying to move, so you have to bear with us. Okay, we are trying to move. That is why, for example, I'm scheduling this class for tomorrow. Okay, because initially we have got 3 days: Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday. But because of the way things are moving, UNZA and my classes here and everything, it becomes difficult for us to schedule classes when you guys have got classes. So please, try to understand us. Okay, so tomorrow let's do the Lagrangian. What's the time even? 21:19. Okay, let's get back to our business. We're going to stop at 21:30. Okay, so let's try to borrow something from the classicals. So we are saying that we know from the classicals that actually what determines output is the factors of production and the production function. Okay, and then the factors of production actually fixed. Okay, they're actually fixed. They're given. They're exogenous. Okay, and then consumption depends on disposable income. Okay, Then there's a negative relationship between interest rates and investment. And then net exports is the difference between national savings and investment. Okay? Which is what we're talking about here. That net exports is the difference between domestic savings and investment. Then now, let's combine all these. Okay? Let's combine everything here. So now, if we do our substitutions, we are then going to understand that national savings, net exports is equal to Y, which is that Y, but this Y is fixed by the factors of production and the production function. That is why this guy is fixed with a bar on top. Okay, so net export is equal to fixed output minus consumption, because this is just consumption, and consumption is a linear function of disposable income. Okay, then minus government expenditure. So this is domestic savings. This is domestic savings minus investment. But this level of investment is no longer depending on the domestic rate of interest. Instead, this level of investment is depending on the global or the world rate of interest. That is the R star. Meaning that net exports is equal to fixed savings. Fixed savings. Why are savings fixed? Savings are fixed because Y is fixed. This Y is fixed, that Y is fixed, this T is fixed because T is determined by the fiscal policy, and then government is also fixed, which is also determined by fiscal policy. So since all the variables here are fixed, we expect savings to be fixed as well. Okay? So national savings, net exports is equal to national savings minus investment, of which this level of investment depends on the world rate of interest. Meaning that this equation is suggesting that the trade balance, okay, is determined by the difference between savings and investment at the world rate of interest. Okay, so this is our trade balance. Okay, our trade balance is a linear function of the difference between savings and investment, where investment or the level of investment depends on the world rate of interest. So that is what we are talking about here. That is what we're talking about here. Okay, now maybe we can, let's try to do this and then we can, because of 7 minutes. So let's look at savings and investment in a small open economy. Okay, so let's first try to analyze what is happening here. So as usual, the investment function is negative. Okay, there's a negative relationship between investment and this rate of interest, which is the world real rate of interest or the global real rate of interest. Okay, and then here we have savings and or investment, because we understand that at equilibrium the level of savings must equal the level of savings must equal investment. Okay, so now let's understand this. We have the interest rate, which is for a closed economy, so we can call this the domestic rate of interest, and then we also have the world rate of interest. Okay, so those are the variables that we have, and then we also have net export. So those are the variables that we have. So if we are in a closed economy, it is the domestic rate of interest that adjusts to equilibrate savings and investment. I don't think this is a problem because we discussed this last time. Okay, so in a closed economy, it is a domestic real rate of interest that adjusts to equilibrate savings and investment. So now, if we open the economy, it is the interest rate that is set by the world financial market that then equilibrates our savings and investment. Okay? Now, the difference that exists then between savings and investment is going to determine our trade balance. Now, let me explain that using the diagram. Okay? So, we have fixed savings, and this is coming from here. Okay? Because all these variables are fixed. So we have fixed savings and a downward sloping investment demand curve. Okay? So what we're saying is that in an instance, so let's assume that our our domestic rate of interest is here. Okay? And at that very time, the world rate of interest is less than, the world rate of interest is less than our interest rate. Then what we expect is that since, how can I explain this? Let's say we're talking about the Bank of Zambia and the World Bank. Okay, so let's assume that the rate that is charged by the Central Bank of Zambia, is the domestic rate of interest, and then the rate that is charged by the World Bank is the, let's say, the global. From that angle, then what I'm saying is that since R star, okay, let's start with R star, which is on top. So that one, since R star is above our domestic, so the rate that World Bank is charging is greater than the rate that here in Zambia we are charging. Then in that case, the savings are greater than investment. Now, I maybe you're wondering what I'm talking about. We understand that whenever the rate of interest is higher, we expect the demand to be less, and demand in this case is coming from investment. So if the rate that the World Bank is charging is greater than the rate that we here in Zambia are charging, we understand that in that case, since we have opened our economy, in that case, the amount of investment that is demanded at that R star, the World Bank rate of interest, is just this level. Okay? So in that case, it means that since the World Bank since the rate that World Bank is charging is greater than the rate that the central bank is charging, then at that rate, investment must be less than savings. So in that case, if the rate of investment is less than the rate of savings, then we're running a positive trade balance. Okay? Because savings are savings are greater than investment. Okay? So we're saying that in this case, if R star is above the domestic and savings exceed investment, then there's a trade surplus. Let me repeat myself. I know maybe this might be confusing. So what I'm saying is this. We understand that net exports, net exports, is a difference between savings and investment. Okay? And the rate of interest, in this case we're talking about the global or the world rate of interest, is determined by the global savings and the global investment. Get it right from there. A minute. Okay, let me try to explain something under a minute. Then, if that is the case, since savings are fixed, and then the demand function is negative sloping. Okay, if what Bank of Zambia is charging is less than what the World Bank is charging, okay, and we're assuming that we've opened our economy, then we are using that rate of interest, not this rate of interest. We are using that rate of interest, the global rate of interest. Then, since this guy is greater than our rate of interest, then at that rate of interest, we expect investment to be less than savings, because savings at that rate of interest are actually greater than the investment level. Then if that is true, if savings are greater than investment, then we expect us to run a positive trade balance, because it means that we can now, people are now going to start demanding from us. Okay, those that want to invest, they'll be demanding from Zambia, because the price in Zambia, in this case, it is the real interest rate. The price in Zambia is less than the price that is charged by the World Bank. Then we expect people that are actually demanding, in this case, investment, is going to increase here in Zambia, because people are going to start demanding the Zambian savings, not the savings that offered by the World Bank. I don't know if you're getting this right. Hey, let me get some feedback before we close. Next time, we're going to start from here. So how is it, Christopher?
No, just repeat.
Okay, I'll repeat. Chris, how is it? Is it making sense?
I think so. Yes, it's making sense.
Okay. Sandra Julo, is it making sense? Sandra Julo.
Yeah, it's making sense.
Okay, it's making sense. Thanks. So at least na balance, from a gentleman and from a lady. We don't need to be gender biased. Okay, so under a minute, trust me, under a minute now. Okay, so what we're saying is that if savings, Ndalama, listen, if savings are fixed, and then we are saying that what equilibrates savings and investment in an open economy, it is not the domestic rate of interest, but the world rate of interest. Now, if the world rate of interest is greater than the domestic rate of interest, we expect investment to be less than savings, because vadula ivimanje. Okay, let's say we are buying things from two different markets, okay, but the price that we are using is that one from the Bazungus, okay. So now, if the price from the Bazungus is greater than the price that is actually offered here in Zambia, we expect the demand for the Bazungus goods to be less than their supply. Okay, because we're going to demand less from those goods because they're expensive. Okay, so in that case, then we are saying that here in Zambia, then we are going to say, let's take advantage of that. Okay, let's apply now here in Zambia. So in that case, we are going to run a positive trade balance, because people will start demanding from here. They're going to be demanding things from here now. Okay, so that is the reason why we're going to run a trade balance. So nikapazo cha beaka, nikapazo. Okay, so let's end here.